Well, hello and welcome to the Monday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you had a fabulous weekend. Hope you got to get out there in between the raindrops, I guess, and enjoy what's left of the fall colors. I can tell you with the weather that we've had over the last 4 or 5 days with the winds and then all that rain, there's not an awful lot of color left out there, just a bunch of yellows. I was out in one of my favorite places in Nova Scotia, down in Lunenburg County on Saturday, and I'll tell you, the trees are getting bare, and the reds are just about gone out of the foliage, and it's yellow, it's fall, and it's pretty much done. I think we're getting to the end of the fall color season. Lots of rain last night, more on the way, 15 millimeters or so coming up here in the next 24 hours. One thing I did notice when I was out in Lunenburg County on Saturday, I was in the woods, and I noticed the traditional areas on those, the dirt roads where you drive down the dirt road or you walk down the dirt road, and there's always a puddle there, right? Well, those puddles had water in them, and it was fairly deep. So I don't know if that's a result of what Allister was talking about on Friday, when the ground gets so hard because of all this drought that the water just kind of sits. But those traditional puddle areas, as I call them, were full, so that could be a good sign. We're going to connect up, by the way, with Allister in Hour 3 today to get an update on the rain last night and what's moving forward. And he's also going to join us for a quick update on what's going on with Melissa. I know many of you are watching the Caribbean very closely right now. Category 5 this morning. It is moving towards Jamaica, and when I think of that, I've had the pleasure of visiting Jamaica a couple of times. And when I think of that, I think about the drive that we have in the bus from the airport to the resort that I stayed at, and some of those communities there where people live in cinder block houses with tin roofs, and a Category 5 hurricane that would scare the heck out of me. Of course, Game 3 tonight at the World Series. The series tied at a game apiece. Dodgers complaining yesterday about international travel. I guess they had to go through customs and thought that they were delayed. Maybe, I don't know if that was a shot at Canada or not, but we've been playing here since 1985, guys. It's not new. Anyway, series goes tonight. Max Scherzer, boy, he's got some experience. This is his fourth World Series. As he said in the news this morning, if you heard it, not a lot of really great baseball players that have had one opportunity to play or pitch in a World Series, and he's had 4. So we'll be watching that tonight, of course. And one of our guests in the studio today, and that's District 15 Councillor Billy Gillis, is geared up in his Toronto stuff, and you're ready to go, Councillor Gillis.
Oh, yes. Once in a lifetime for a Jays fan.
Well, twice for us, I guess, because we're of that vintage, but there are many out there that haven't had an opportunity to do this, and you and I were chatting before we came on the air about what we remember about 1992, 1993, And this time around, it just feels like there's just this groundswell of support. Excuse me, for the Jays. That is Councillor Gillis, District 15, Lower Sackville, Beaver Bank. This is Councillors on the Hot Seat, by the way. And on the phone with us today from District 10, that's Halifax, Bedford, Basin West, and that's Kathryn Morse. Councillor Morse, how are you?
Just great. How are you today, Dan?
Good. You got your Blue Jays gear on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Hello, Kathryn.
Hey, Billy, how are you?
Not too bad.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 is the number. Let's get right into the hot seat. Councillor Gillis, we are, of course, there's a meeting this week. There's an agenda out. And one of the things that kind of popped off the agenda to me was this. We're going to get an annual report on Halifax, which is the city's environmental program, for lack of a better term. Your thoughts on Halifax and where we should move with that program here in HRM moving forward?
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, Halifax, important to the environment for sure. Like you said, we are going to receive a report tomorrow at council, an update on it, and we'll go from there, see what happens.
Councillor Morse, your thoughts on Halifax and its importance to the city?
Oh, this is a critical program. We're starting to see some real progress on the ground because it's been in effect now for 3 or 4 years. I think one of the most, there are a lot of things going on. We're putting in electric chargers in my district, for example, to help people reduce, range anxiety when they get an electric vehicle. We're looking at we're mapping the different areas that will be potentially impacted by extreme weather events. But I think one of the most successful projects is the electric bus program that we've been doing. And I think it's really exciting that our electric buses are powered by solar panels on the roof of the Ragged Lake Depot. So it's very integrated, very forward-thinking, and I'm looking forward to the report and the next steps to make progress on our climate goals.
Councillor Gillis, for those of you that don't understand what we're talking about, Halifax there's a number of different things that this is responsible. It also gets a 3% of the budget of tax revenue that comes into HRM to help fund it. Councillor Gillis, we know we're up against the financial wall, I'll call it, as budget deliberations are about to begin. The mayor laid it out pretty bare for us a couple of weeks ago here on the program, the situation that we're in. When we're in such a tight financial situation with the city, there's obviously some decisions that are going to have to be made. Is Halifax and this 3% of that budget, is that a golden goose for you? Is that something you'll try to avoid cutting?
Yeah, like you said, Dan, I mean, we're facing a steep increase here coming shortly. I mean, it's not looking good. I mean, there's a lot of projects on the table that need funding, and we just don't have the funding. I'm willing to look at some hard cuts. I mean, we need to look here. We need to make some deep cuts. And for me, nothing is off the table. I mean, I'm willing to look at anything.
Councillor Morse, is that something you're going to look at as well when we get to budgets?
No, I think it's very important to protect our climate plan and keep making progress. We've already invested a lot of time and energy and money in some of these solutions, and I think we have to keep moving forward. This is about creating a more resilient city in the future, making sure our kids and grandkids have a good city and a resilient city to live in. And I don't think it's a good time to roll that back now.
Councillor Morse, I've asked all the councillors that I've had in the studio here about these upcoming budget deliberations, and of course we can't really go line by line because we haven't seen it yet. But that all being said, are there areas where you think that the city can find savings and can find efficiencies so we can knock that 10% number that's getting kicked around?
Oh, I do think we have to look everywhere we can, but there are ways to raise revenue as well. I think one of the things that's very disappointing to me is that we tried to increase the development charges as a revenue source a couple of years ago, and this would generate a fair bit of revenue for the city if we charged the developers a little bit more. At the time, we had the lowest development rates in the country. And although we tried to raise them, the province told us we couldn't do that. They can overrule us because our legislation is under the provincial legislation. So that was the source of revenue that was cut off. I think we need to revisit that and look at other ways to increase the revenue coming into the city.
Councillor Gillis?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. Sorry, back to the question. What was the question?
The question is, can we find, or do you think we can find enough efficiencies and savings in the current budget to knock that 10% number that keeps getting bantered about down?
Yeah, I don't know about 10%. Last year, we went right to the bottom and we scraped and we tried to keep that tax rate down, and we did keep it flat, the tax rate. I mean, a little bit more challenging this year. There's a lot. There's much more larger projects on there that we need to fund. One being the Windsor Street Exchange. That's going to be, expensive. I don't know if we can do it this year. It's going to be hard. We either got to make a lot of cuts or the tax rate has to go up. And I'm not in favor of the tax rate going up, so I would rather look in-house to start. So
by cuts, what are you considering? What are you looking at?
Well, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens here in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what staff bring forth in the budget plans, and it's going to be challenging, but I'm willing to look at anything.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That's the number. The lines are open. If you have a question for our two councillors on the hot seat, here's an opportunity. The lines are wide open. Again, those numbers are 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Councillor Morse, last week or the week before now, the province amending the rules on the Code of Conduct, which essentially now has stopped the public from having the ability to file a complaint against the councillor until these rules are changed. Your thoughts on this process?
I don't think that was a good idea. I would rather us have an open process where people feel they can register a complaint about any councillor, about the mayor, about anybody on council. The public should have that opportunity.
Councillor Gillis?
Yep, agree with Kathryn on that one. I think the public should be able to file complaints. However, what was happening, from what I understand, is just, municipalities, I don't know if ours was affected too much in there, but, the complaints were coming hot and furious. I mean, are they frivolous? Well, I don't know. That's the thing. So I understand what they did, just because, the complaints that were coming in, they couldn't handle it. And it's very expensive, right, to investigate these claims. So
my thoughts are, I get it, and I understand the expense, right? I get the fact that, each one of these complaints has to be investigated, but that's the responsibility of the independent investigator to determine if these things are frivolous or not. And I understand the position from you guys and from others that I've spoken to on these things, that there could be the perception of somebody ganging up on somebody or being a concerted effort moving forward. But, just to not have the ability, at least at this point, it could be until 26 or 27 until these rules are fixed, to not have the ability to lodge that complaint is quite puzzling to me.
Here's one thing I might add, though, with that. The people that investigate these, they're often lawyers and, people set up with businesses investigating claims and stuff like that. Are they ever going to say no? Probably not, right? Right. So the complaint comes forward, it might be silly, but they're going to go, oh, of course it does have merit. Of course, let me investigate this and charge you guys a whole pile of money, right? So that's pretty much the way it goes.
At the end of the day, though, the decision on any kind of sanction or any kind of punishment for a councillor is decided by council anyway, right?
No. It's investigated by the investigator. They make a recommendation. It comes forward to us. Then we can, I've never really been through one of these, so it's not like, we just sit there and go yay or nay. There's processes to this that have to be followed.
Councillor Morse, your thoughts?
Well, we did hire an independent investigator. My understanding is they have dismissed a few complaints as frivolous, and we were working through the process. As Billy says, Councillor Gillis says, it's a relatively new process, but it's very disappointing to me that the province would feel the need to step in here. We were working through it. I think it's better to have an open, transparent approach to these kinds of complaints, and I'm very disappointed at what has happened here.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take our first break on Councillors on the Hot Seat. Opportunity for you to ask our councillors questions. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. It is Councillors on the Hot Seats. In the studio today is District 15 Councillor. That's Billy Gillis. On the phone from District 10 is Kathryn Morse. Lots of lines open if you want to ask a question of our councillors. Perfect opportunity to do so. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. To the phones, we welcome David to the show. David, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good. Your question, please.
I'd like a question for Councillor Gillis. I'm just wondering if you're making any progress or intend to make any progress on maybe getting another arena built in Lower Sackville.
Go ahead.
Hi, David. Thank you very much for the question. Right now, nothing. I'm certainly advocating for it. We need definitely more ice space. I mean, we just got a couple sheets right now, and that's not enough. Hockey teams are, basically fighting over.
No, it's definitely
space.
not enough.
No,
That's
not
for
even
sure.
close. But as of right now, no plans in the future.
Well, what do you say we get started on it?
Definitely, I'm working on it. I've had some conversations with staff already. I mean, we certainly have the land for it out there, and with all the stuff that's going on out there now, development-wise, now would be the time.
It would be, because now we've got our kids going to Dartmouth and Halifax and Bedford for practices, trying to get on some ice here, and it's just absolutely ridiculous that we have to go all the way to Dartmouth and Halifax to get ice.
Agreed.
We've got a lot of kids out in Sackville that are interested and want to play hockey. And their parents shouldn't have to drive them all over the place to get them to the rink.
Couldn't agree with you more, David.
Well, let's get to work on it. Let's get her done.
All right.
All right, David, appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Councillor Gillis, before the break, we were talking about the budgets and so on and so forth, and in a financial situation that I think the city's in. I haven't seen the actual numbers, but that I've been told are out there. Hockey rinks and rec facilities and that kind of stuff. That'll be a tough sell given the financial state that we're in, isn't it?
Yeah, that is, and often that's usually the first things that usually get cut are usually parks and rec and sports programs and stuff like that. But I don't know. We need to find a balance to make it work, because that's certainly stuff that we need in the community: rinks and more public spaces.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Councillor Morse, I got an email question here from someone in your district who is wondering how the pellet shelters are working by the Canada Game Centre. Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, thank you. That's actually just outside my district, in District 12, but I do get some questions about it. As far as I'm aware, things are very quiet there, and it's working out well for the people who are living there and sort of having a chance to stabilize and get their life back on track. I haven't had any complaints. There was one incident involving the police that I'm aware of, but it turned out to be not as serious as initially reported. So basically it's been going for almost 2 years now, and relatively quiet.
It's interesting because there was a lot of concern. I live up in that part of the world, and there was a lot of concern in the community about those shelters being that close to the game center, being that close to a school, being that close to a library.
Absolutely, yeah. People were very concerned. It was brand new, and anytime there's a change, people have concerns. But this seems to have been working out well. I have met with the high school principal. She had no concerns about it. Seems to be working out just fine so far.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Looking into the council agenda this week, Councillor Morse, I'll start with you on this one. There's a motion to spend some money on museum upgrades or museum repairs, having to dip into reserves to do so. Do you support this motion? And if we start dipping into reserves, is that going to put us into an even more precarious position budget-wise?
Yeah, I'm going to have to take a closer look at that one. I don't like using reserve funding unless it's been earmarked for the particular area that they're proposing spending it on. So if it's a reserve that was dedicated for museums, I'll support that. If it's not, I probably won't.
Councillor Gillis?
Yeah, typically I'm not in favor of using reserves to pay down anything, but like Councillor Morse said there, I mean, if it was earmarked for that, then sure. But other than that, I'm willing to take hard looks at everything like I am with everything, and I'm very cheap and I don't like spending money.
Councillor Gillis, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we've a couple of times already today we've discussed budgets, and you've mentioned bud cuts, and when you say cuts, people's ears perk up almost as much as they do when you talk about budget increases. Is there a balance? Is there going to be a balance with the financial state that we're in right now, that we can get those services like that hockey rink you're talking about, yet be fiscally responsible and not see a double-digit increase in taxes?
That's the challenge. It's a challenge every year. What might be important to me might not be important to, say, Kathryn Morse, right, in her district. So the challenge with 16 councillors and trying to balance and get this fine line of what everybody thinks that we need versus, what we want. Always challenging.
Right. Councillor Morse, got a couple of emails already from people that are unable to call in but are curious about why your statement earlier said that you wouldn't be looking at Halifax as a budget measure, and they wonder why that is.
Well, it's something that we worked very hard on in the previous council. We have put a lot of effort into it. It's about public safety in many cases, making sure that we're prepared for the more extreme weather events that we know are going to be coming our way. I think it's just the responsible thing for any council to look at how to make your city, able to face what's coming in the future. I mean, it's about mapping out the most extreme areas, our coastline, making sure we're prepared. And it's also about making the adaptations that we know we have to make anyway. I mean, we have to, most cities are changing their transit fleets over gradually from gas and oil and moving them towards electrified fleets. So in some cases, it's just about public safety and being better prepared. In other cases, it's just about planning ahead for changes that we need to make anyway.
We're staring down a Halifax water increase at 36%. We're looking at a significant increase in power rates coming from Nova Scotia Power, and obviously still lots of work to be done, but that initial number of 10% of property tax rate increase is scary for people. When people out there see a 3% amount of money, 3% of our tax money going to these kind of programmings with Halifax, Councillor Morse, can you see where the frustration lies?
I certainly can, but it's our job on council to balance all of the things that Councillor Gillis was mentioning, and also balance what we need now and what we need in the future. We can't forget about what, part of our job as councillors is to do long-term planning, and we can't be so short-sighted. Often elected leaders get accused of thinking only about the next few years and the next election. We have to think beyond that. We have to think for a generation ahead. And many of these choices that we make have long-term impacts. So that's very much on my mind.
Councillor Gillis?
We're facing monumental tax increase here, like you mentioned, Dan. 36% for Halifax water. What was the other one you mentioned?
Power.
Nova Scotia Power, yeah. I mean, we run our houses like this, so you only have so much money. The bills come in, you have to make cuts, you have to balance that. So, we need to do the same thing as a municipality here. So I'm willing to look at everything and anything, basically. That's my view.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to stop and take a break for the news. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. This is Councillors on the Hot Seat. This is your opportunity to ask some questions of our two councillors. In the studio is District 15 councillor. That's Lower Sackville and Beaver Bank, and it's Billy Gillis. And on the phone today with us is District 10 councillor, and that's Kathryn Morse. That's Halifax, Bedford, Basin, West. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phones, and we welcome Ruth to the show. Ruth, how are you?
Good, Dan. How you doing?
Good. Your question, please.
My question is, has council ever heard of any aquatic center going in the St. Margaret's Bay, Tantallon area? I lived out there for 40 years, and I've seen expansions for hockey players at the St. Margaret's Arena. No bus routes down the Peggy's Cove Road where I live. But East Hants has a huge Equana Center. I just want to know why Tantallon, Hammers Plains, St. Margaret's Bay has a big tax base. Is there never any talk about an aquatic center out our way?
I'll start with you, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Ruth. As far as I know, there's no plans for one there. It's not my district. That's Councillor Hartling that's out there. But I'm not sure if there's any plans. I mean, do we need them? Absolutely. I think, we could use another one out here in Lower Sackville. But Tantallon, I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Well, Lower Sackville seems to get all the stuff. They get the new rinks. They get everything. We had an expansion in the St. Margaret Center. We had 2 rinks, and they expanded it to 4. We have 1 outdoor pool, and that's it. We don't even have any indoor pools. Sackville seems to get a lot.
Oh,
so we're only growing. Our tax base out here is huge now.
I'll disagree with you that Lower Sackville gets a lot. I mean, it takes a lot to fight for things that we have. I mean, we don't have a new rink. But, I mean, I can check with Councillor Hartling, see what she knows about the situation, but I don't know if there's any plans in the immediate future.
Correct. Kathryn, Councillor Morse. Sorry, Ruth, let's see if Councillor Morse has any better information.
Thanks.
Well, adding a pool? Adding a pool is quite a huge expense. They're in the tens of millions of dollars, so it's not something that is done quickly. We definitely need another pool, aquatic center somewhere in the HRM area. Typically, it would be a new pool would be put somewhere where the most people could reach it. More centrally located, I would think, if we are going to add a new aquatic facility. It's not something that's on the books, I don't think, this year. Unfortunately, I see over and over, this will be my 6th budget, I guess it is, recreation in HRM often is underfunded as far as I'm concerned. When we make tax decisions or decisions that could increase taxes, we definitely look at Parks and Rec as one of the places where we're going to cut. I think we do need to add more recreation facilities in HRM. We are growing. We've added about 100,000 people in the last 10 or 12 years, but the determination to keep taxes low means that we don't have a lot of money for recreation.
I understand that. The other issue that we have is they want us to be healthy. They want us to take and not, use the health system if we can. So I've been trying to stay active my whole life, and I've lived out here for 40 years, and there is nothing. We don't even have a big gym that we can go to. We have a little tiny gym in St. Margaret's Arena, so we don't even have a gym. We only just recently this year got through Halifax Rec, a program out in Glen Margaret, which we were surprised at, and now we're thinking that it's going to get cut because cuts are coming. And also, the other thing, I just heard Raymar Development has got a new subdivision going in, possibly 700 homes going in off the Peggy's Cove Road where I live, and there's no bus route. Bus route went to exit 5 and stopped. So we are lacking a lot of things out our way. It's frustrating, and I know you guys can't do anything about it, but that's just my opinion for today and my thoughts.
Appreciate it, Ruth. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Councillor Morse, any final thoughts on that piece?
No, she makes a very good point. I mean, we need these kinds of facilities. It's about people staying healthy, and it's also about having places for people to socialize. When we're creating whole new neighborhoods and people are moving in, they need places to meet each other and get together and have some fun. I mean, a city's not just about places to sleep and places to work. We need places to socialize and get to know each other. So I would like to see more investment in our parks and recreation facilities. It's going to be tough to do this year for sure, with the determination to get the tax rate down and the tax bills down. It's always a balancing act, but I think what people need to recognize is it's similar for many cities across Canada. We have kind of an outdated way of taxing people based only on property taxes. And I think we need to, there's a lot of call for revising the tax system for cities across Canada. And I think that's what we need to do. We need more direct provincial and federal transfers and a better way of supporting our growing cities.
Councillor Gillis.
Yeah, to the last caller there, I heard from Councillor Hartling, and one of the things that she brought up was there's no municipal water out there. So that's one of the reasons why we can't have an aquatic center, because there's no access to municipal water supply, right? Everything is on wells, and it's kind of hard to keep an aquatic center running on a well.
Speaking of wells, Councillor Gillis, your area is obviously being impacted by this lack of rain that we're having. How bad is the situation with wells in Beaver Bank and in Lower Sackville?
I've heard, it's troublesome for sure. There are wells that have gone dry. I welcome this rain. We need to recharge the groundwater system ASAP. But yeah, I mean, it's troublesome, right? You get the water trucks are going constantly refilling wells out there, so. Scary. And
there's really, other than, doing what we're doing, and I know the provinces, last I saw, had bought 700,000 bottles of water for people and so on and so forth. But, if we can't make it rain, if we could, I'm sure we would, right?
Yeah, that's right.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Ken to the show. Ken, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dan?
Good. Your question for our councillors, please.
Yeah, for Councillor Morse, when you asked was if that's not in the budget, are you willing to lay back on the projects or whatever? And she was too quick to say no. And I'm wondering, I don't know the full scoop of the program or whatever, but you mentioned charging stations. You really need charging stations in HRM? Are people coming from Cape Breton with electric vehicles to work every day? You have a charging station at your house, I would assume, if you buy an electric vehicle. It's the same thing with the bike lanes. This is something that 1% of the city use, and you have people like Sam Austin that are going off the head with, bike lanes here everywhere. And then you preach fiscal responsibility. The two don't match up.
Councillor Morse?
Well, I have to disagree with you there. I mean, we're growing as a city, and we're reaching the level of population where we have to have transit. We have to get more people on transit to make the city function, to reduce congestion for those who are in vehicles, for the truck traffic moving through the city. We have to have a more efficient transit system to make the city work as a whole. And when you have bike lanes and better sidewalks and multi-use paths and that kind of infrastructure, it helps people get to transit. It helps people get home from transit. And it helps the transit system work better. These are all integrated systems, but we have to do much more to make the transit system faster, more convenient for people, and more accessible. And providing bike lanes helps you get to the transit, helps you get home again. That's the way most cities are moving to integrate their facilities and give people a lot more options for getting around, so they're not stuck.
What does bike lanes and truck traffic have in common? What's the link there? Because I drove tractor trailer for almost 30 years, and tell me the benefit of having a bike lane that's going to close down the lanes like Lower Sackville and Hollis Street for absolutely no reason. It is doing nothing but gridlock and traffic all in the city, and the same thing with the no right turns. Don't understand that either. I don't know where.
The same number of lanes. The same number of lanes.
No, it's not. No, it's not. There's a guy who does, and I keep using this as an example. There's a guy who's got a business there for paper shredding, and he has the little green bins, the same as the green bins are for your house for garbage, and he doesn't even have enough room now on Hollis Street he has to wait for a break in the traffic before he can lift up that bin to dump it in his vehicle. That's how close everything is down there. There's no longer two lanes. There is one lane going through Hollis Street, and the same thing with Lower Water Street. You have no room for anything down there anymore. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
Councillor Gillis? Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, Ken. I mean, you raised some good points there. Charging stations, we don't have a charging station in Lower Sackville. The closest one to us is Bedford. We have to go to, the Bedford Commons. Do we need that? Absolutely. It's going to require hundreds of millions of dollars to build that infrastructure out. Should we pause that right now and have a look at it? Maybe. I'm willing to do anything, really.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. A few minutes left here in the Councillors on the Hot Seat segment. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And Councillor Morse, before we get back to the phones, I want to ask you a question. It came up to me. I wrote it down here when we were having the debate over Dartmouth Cove. And I do believe it was you that raised the issue of conflict of interest with regards to developer campaign contributions. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Why did you raise that?
It was a question that I had, and our solicitor said there was no conflict of interest there, so we moved on.
So at the end of the day, you're good with the way the current setup is with campaign contributions and that kind of thing?
Well, everything is posted online. I think if people are aware of that, they can check it. I mean, it's transparent, all our donations to everyone on council. It's there for people to read, and in that way, it's not a conflict of interest.
Councillor Gillis, campaign contributions.
Yeah, same thing. I don't have a problem with anybody really taking. I mean, they have to use the judgment of whether they accept money from certain people. It is an open and transparent process. Everything gets uploaded online, and it's there right now for the public to see, so you can go look.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Carlos to the show. Carlos, how are you?
I'm good. How are you then?
Good. Your question for the councillors, please.
Good, yes. Well, just last week, I was watching these CBC piece, quite interesting one, talk about water uses. And at a certain point, they were trying to find out how much water was being used by Amazon side in Montreal. And they realized that Amazon was not aware, and not even the city was not aware how much water was being used. There was no, a meter. So my question is, who's keeping track of the water usage of developers in their building and construction? Because is there a meter there? And is that the same rate that a regular individual family pays?
Thanks, Carlos. I'll start with you, Councillor Gillis. Any idea?
Yeah, I think I can kind of take that. Thank you, Carlos, for the question. Construction sites, they don't have water hooked up right away usually. They have to truck it in for everything that they do. For mixing mortar, mixing bricks, whatnot. Everything has to be trucked in. So I would imagine they would pay for water through some sort of bulk delivery process at one of the stations, I imagine. But usually the water doesn't get hooked up until occupancy occurs. So I hope that helps.
Councillor Morse, any thoughts?
I'm not very familiar with the question. I'm sorry. I don't really have anything to add.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. Thanks, Carlos. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Got a couple of calls I want to get to here. Len, welcome to the show.
Well, good morning. It's the first time I've ever called, too, when it comes to the councillors. But I'd like to ask you a question that one gentleman was asking to do with helping congestion of cars and anything else for that matter. But, for example, there's a couple of streets in Halifax that have more traffic probably than most other streets or anything.
Len, are you still there?
I want to ask, why are, like Roby Street, Bayers Road, you got one lane that is locked off for just buses alone, and yet you've got no cars or no buses coming down on those lanes, maybe one or two once in a while, yet you've got about a mile or 2 miles of cars that are in one lane. Now, does that make sense in helping, congestion or anything? That to me, it doesn't make sense to me, because for many years, I've lived in Halifax all my life, and I don't think buses have any problem stopping and letting people off or letting them in and stopping, and the cars behind them would just stop until he's done his job and he continues on. But to block off these particular streets like Roby Street and Bayers Road, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, what is your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Len. I'll start with you, Councillor.
I can
go ahead, Councillor Morse. Like. Sure.
And maybe the caller could turn off his radio because we're hearing a lot of reverb there or something. Great question. Bayers Road, I guess, is a good example because there's been a lot of changes on Bayers Road. And the reason for the dedicated bus lanes there is to speed up the passage of the buses, especially during peak times, so the buses don't wait in traffic. Like between 4 and 6, if you're sitting there in a car, as I have on a few occasions, the buses are going by. The buses are bypassing all the cars. It makes the overall transit system more efficient because the buses can get to their next destination and then continue on their route and remain reliable. And the more reliability we have, the more people can use transit and want to use transit. So there are a number of reasons for it, but it's about making the overall transit system more effective if we have dedicated lanes moving through bottlenecks, remaining on schedule, and making transit a more attractive option for more people. We've got to have more dedicated bus lanes through the city, through certain bottlenecks, to keep the system working and to expand the system.
Councillor Gillis.
The same thing, Len. We're planning for the future. I know it sucks right now. You look in like the bus lane, there's nobody in it, and the lanes are, backed up with cars. Someday when the BRT gets built out, there will be all kinds of buses running continuously nonstop down there, and that's basically what we are planning for currently. So we're in like a transition phase right now where we have to build the infrastructure first to get the buses on them. I mean, we can't wait until, the buses come and then start trying to build it out. So that's why you see right now empty lanes and stuff. So yeah, it's frustrating, to people, but it'll be better in the long run.
Councillor Morse, I'm thinking of the Roby Street lane for sure has been there at least a year, if not longer. Do we have any stats, any data if it's accomplishing its goal and keeping transit more on schedule?
Well, that's the big challenge is when we're part of the way through a project, we don't see the results that we want to see yet. It's about building out a whole network, and we still have bottlenecks on Roby. So I haven't looked exactly at those numbers, but I know until we get some of those bottlenecks fully addressed, we won't be meeting all our targets. We won't reach all our targets until we get more of the system completed.
Just about out of time, Councillor Morris, anything going on in District 10 that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Oh, we're making great progress on Dutch Village Road.
Oh boy, I can't wait till that's open because oh my goodness.
You and thousands of others. It's looking good, and we're on track to get that completed on time.
When's its completion date? Do you know offhand?
Mid-December.
Okay.
Mid-December for sure. Yeah.
So it'll be a Christmas present for me coming to work. Then is what you're telling me.
Yes, it's all we want for Christmas out here in District 10.
What's going on in your district, Mr. Gillis?
This week, I'm going to have the transit director out to my neck of the woods, and we're going to go over the transit routes that are going on out there right now, in Beaver Bank specifically. And then later on in the week, I'm going to be riding along with the Lower Sackville RCMP, and which is interesting. And while I'm here, I just want to give a shout out to District 16, Councillor John St. Amand. This weekend, the date is November 2nd. We got the West Bedford pump track opening. All kinds of celebration happening there. There's going to be DJs and free bike tune-ups, giveaways, and everything. Rain or shine, it's going to be quite the party. So this Sunday, 520 Brookline Drive.
I'll have to make a trip over there. Sure, go ahead, Kathryn.
Well, we're pumped for the pump track for sure. Go. That's going to be a great opening.
Appreciate it, Councillor Morse. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
That
Thanks,
is Councillor Kathryn Morse and
Catherine.
Councillor Gillis. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Thank you both.
We're going to stop and take a break here on the program for the news. On the other side of it, time to open up those telephone lines. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Something here you heard on Councillors on the Hot Seat you'd like to discuss, or something else is on your mind. It is the first open hour of the week, so we'll open up those lines to you. Again, the number 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the news. Welcome back. It's time for the first open hour of the week. The lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Hope you were listening to our Councillors in the Hot Seat segment just an hour ago. Interesting discussions. And for the last couple of weeks, interesting discussions. And the reason why I say that is if you were listening a couple of weeks back when we had our conversation with the mayor, Andy Fillmore laid it out pretty bare. He laid out a financial state of HRM that isn't very rosy. And I know councillors out there will tell you in conversations that it's not looking good budget-wise, right? And it's interesting to me, and maybe it's just me, but it is very interesting to listen to councillors who have golden gooses that they're unwilling to look at when it comes to budget time. Last week, we were talking with Councillor Cleary, active transportation, which is better known as bike lanes, off the table. Asked the question. His response was one word, no. This week, Councillor Morse, I asked about the Halifax plan, which is before council tonight, when they meet this afternoon, tomorrow when they meet for their regular council meeting. And that's a 3% chunk of the budget, 3% of the tax revenue that comes from you and me and Vanessa and everybody else goes to fund Halifax. It was $18 or $19 million or something they got in funding for last year, I think was the number. So that was an absolute no for Councillor Morse. Without any question, just an absolute no. We need this. We need to be ready for the future. We need to have these big projects in place. We need to have the electric buses. We need to have the charging stations at different places so that was the word that she said something about charging anxiety or charger anxiety for those with electric cars. I thought one of our callers raised a very interesting point during the Councillors on the Hot Seat session, that if you have an electric car and you're charging it at home, how much anxiety is there? It's 3% of the budget. Before we say go. It's $40 to $50 million, folks, that they're going to have to find savings on. $40 to $50 million to start. And there are some projects and some services out there that you and I have become accustomed to that could very well no longer be there. Are we going to get to the point where the grass in your park doesn't get cut? Because we don't need that. Are we going to see this lack of ice surface continue? In fact, are we going to see even more? I know that Hockey Nova Scotia has been working very hard on coming up with a program that will better utilize ice surface space so that we can, be more efficient with it. But that being said, is it going to impact your kids' hockey program or your kids' figure skating program or the baseball diamonds that you play softball on all year? Parks and Rec, as one of our counselors said, is normally the first thing that gets the axe. But things that some counselors have as so-called untouchables: active transportation, Halifax, the climate, for lack of a better term, the climate tax. Those, for some, appear to be untouchable. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let us welcome Peter to the program. Peter, how are you?
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Good.
Just like to bring up a concern. Well, I'm a biker, and I do support bike lanes. There's a lot of issues around it, how they're dealt with. I understand that. But I have a specific concern living on South Park where we park outside of the bike lane. And,
yes, sir.
But bicyclists and scooters are coming down the wrong way on that road. And so it's a real safety hazard for elderly people or maybe hearing impaired people. And so I'd like to know if there's some education around how to use a bike lane, how to be respectful of using those lanes, and if there's some enforcement if someone's going down the wrong lane, because it truly is a hazard. You've got to look both ways now, and there's no noise. And so if you're hearing or have a visual impairment or anything of that nature, it's quite dangerous. So I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts on that.
Well, Peter, that South Park Street bike lane gives me anxiety, I can tell you, and for a number of reasons. Down by the VG, when you're making a turn at a wild intersection down there, and that bike lane is on the other side of a bollard, it's very difficult to see up that lane when you're making a right-hand turn, right? And you have to hopefully you can see them in the mirrors. If not, it's difficult. Also, that South Park Street has become so skinny now with that lane there that I parked my vehicle up against the concrete bollard, and the bus hit my mirror. So it's pretty tight in there. But I have not seen people. So they're going both ways on that bike lane. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I see a number of people just coming down the wrong way on the opposite side.
Wow.
In scooters and in bikes, and they tend to be kids most of the time, teenagers, right. and they're traveling at quite a rate.
Yes, they are.
It's a real hazard.
It is, and enforcement, right? That tends to be the be all, the catch all, but I don't see a lot of it.
No, and education on how to use it and be respectful. I think that's critical. Peter,
great call. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This email from Robert says, if they had to cut $40 to $50 million, that would be one thing, but we all know that they don't have to cut $40 to $50 million. They can simply go back to the taxpayer and extract the funds from their wallets. That's what's wrong in a nutshell with HRM budgeting. I get it, Rob. And somebody else had sent me an email during the segment saying to Councillor Gillis's point where he said, your household, that he compared the city budget to the household budget. And I get that. But to be fair to council, they are unable to run a deficit. By provincial statute, they're unable to run a deficit. Now, I get it. Budgeting, some of the budgeting decisions that get made are questionable, to say the least, right? And they can take out debentures. They're up to $250 million in debentures. And if you're asking what a debenture is, it's essentially the way that the city borrows money. It's $250 million they approved this year. That number could go up as high as $500 million in just a couple of years. Now, think about that and the amount of debt servicing and so on and so forth that you have no control over. I think that every single thing should be on the budget and should be up for discussion and deliberation. Because as I mentioned during the Councillors on the Hot Seat segment, not only are we staring down a double-digit increase in property tax, who knows how much the provincial assessment's going to go up. So there's more. Then we're looking at a 36% increase in water rates. We're looking at a significant increase in power rates, all coming at the same time. And then I think it was Councillor Morse said they're looking to the province and to the feds for some help with some of these big infrastructure projects. Well, that all comes from you and me too, right? I get it that the burden of that kind of money is spread over more people. But it's still tax money. Right? I'm curious of what you think. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's take our first break here on the Open Hour. You are listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This is the Open Hour. You can chat about whatever it is on your mind, just like John's going to do. John, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Dan. It's not a bad day, really. It's good weather. We're having great weather.
If you like rain, and we all do.
I just want to say that if you want your business to go bankrupt, then let the government handle it for you.
Right.
That's about the size of it, because it seems like they like to spend your money and my money with whatever they want to do. It seems that it's easy for them to put their name on a piece of paper saying that the taxes are going to be going up on this and that and everything. And yet they don't have the money, to use it, so they have to go to you and I to get more money to handle their ways of spending. And I think that's terrible. Like if you want to go bankrupt, hire the councillors of Halifax or province or anybody, and you will not survive. And that's about my question for today.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
One other thing.
Sure.
One other thing,
very quickly,
Dan.
Yep.
When it comes to 1 week, we talked about the congestion that we have in Halifax right now, and yet the councillors that you just had this morning talk about doing things right now that will maybe help in the future. Well, let's not worry about the future right now. Let's deal with the present. That's the problem with them. They keep talking about, well, we're looking down the road. Well, there's nothing wrong with looking down the road, but don't look down the road, but cause things that are going to cause problems right now. Like, for example, that gentleman that called and wanted to know, why is Roby Street and Bayers Road one lane for all these traffic that's going there? When the future comes, if they get the buses and people that are using transits to use it, then we'll go that route. But right now, why are we causing congestion that we're trying to get rid of? And that's my question for today.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Lots of discussion today about the council budget and it being like your household budget. Well, let's take John's point. I don't think there's anything wrong looking into the future. I really don't. When times are good, right? But let's just say you have a household, you have a bed that is getting to the end of its lifespan. I guess maybe the mattress is probably the better way to say that. And if you got money in the budget and you got some extra dollars going on, then maybe you'll go out and buy that mattress. But if your credit cards are maxed out, the car repairs and the car loans are due, you got a 5% rent increase like I got this year, you're probably going to put that mattress purchase off, right? I know that's probably simplifying things a little too much to what the multi-million-dollar city budget is, but I think it kind of makes sense, right? Let's welcome Jim to the show. Jim, how are you?
Good morning. How you doing?
Not too bad. What's on your mind, Mr. Hoskins?
Good. Well, I think I'll propose a little budget that I had in my brochure when I ran for mayor last year, and I think it might be applicable to today. It's just a thought. I think what the city should do is certainly have no tax increase. That would be number one, period. Stay where we are, no tax increase. Number two would be to sell unneeded land and facilities that we might have in the city or other assets that we don't really need and we're just sitting on them. So let's get rid of those, at least look at that. And then the other one is no bike lanes, moratorium on bike lanes. Matter of fact, I would propose that we probably get rid of some of the ones we have now because we're going to have to maintenance those, and really they're just more of a hazard than anything. The other one, Dan, would be that 3% tax that we had for a while. Dump that, get rid of it. We don't need it. And start there. And, we can delay some big capital projects, too, as we move forward. But I think what has to happen is councils really got to put a big mirror up here and look at themselves and say, what are the people telling us in HRM? And a lot of them are telling us that it's not affordable to live here right now. A lot of people are hurting, and we're focusing too much on the bigger issues. How's that for you?
That's a good start, Jim. It's. I think my point, and I think you agree with me on this one, is that when we're in a financial state that we're in, and we're looking at anywhere 40, 50, whatever the number is, $1 million in shortfall for the upcoming budget. I mean, everything should be on the table, right?
Yes, for sure. I agree 100%, and it should be. So now it's time for council to put everything that they might have in their own constituencies and look at the bigger picture. But there's a lot of people that are hurting out in HRM, and they don't need a tax increase. They don't need to pay more taxes. So we can dump some land. We can dump some buildings. There's plenty of vacant buildings, and let's start to move in that direction.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the call, sir.
Take care, Dan.
902 405 6000 1-877-801-8255. I cringe when I think about, you know, the just what's coming, right? So we talk about affordability, and Jim mentioned it in his call. We talk about affordability here, and we talk about the situation. If you were listening to the show last week, lots of really great calls on leases and from landlords. We're not talking about the cranes and the big tall buildings. They're corporations. They do things different. But we're talking about the rent the basement people, or that have one or two units, or one side of a semi-detached or a duplex, or have both and rent both sides, right? If we're going to add a 36% increase in water, and we're going to add, up to 8 and change % increase in electricity, and then a 10% increase in property tax plus their assessment, what's going to happen to affordability, right? That rate, and I don't know if it's the same for large people or large landlords like the buildings I'm looking at here. I would assume it's similar in size. And then what happens to that rent? Right? What happens to the homeowner that, you know, had to refinance their homes during the end of the pandemic when numbers were just staggering? I know they're getting better, but it's still the interest charge on a mortgage is substantial, and then you're going to add all this extra money on top, right? I get it. It's tough. That's why, and you know what? I haven't seen the budget document. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what's in there. I don't get the option of going line by line through the documents. And I've mentioned this before, you know, we've gone through a number of years. Like, we're going back 6, 7, 8, 9 years where we've, and I'm putting quotes around this, found efficiencies, right, in savings in the budget. Well, many will tell you that the city is fairly lean when it comes to those kind of found savings now. I mean, we reached into reserve funds from the library last time around just to get to that zero. If we think it's unaffordable now, if we don't see a big change here, it's going to be even more unaffordable next year. And then the year after that. And then who knows what's going to happen with the rent cap. It's wild. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This is from Gordon. Says, I can make a comment on the bike lanes. The gentleman that called about them going the wrong way is correct. I almost was run over trying to cross the street. I stepped onto the curb and looked both ways. Even on one-way streets, I look both ways. So do I. When I went to cross the streets, this guy was going the wrong way when I stepped on the road, and if I hadn't seen him with my peripheral vision and jumped out of the way, he'd have run right over me. And that got me mad. And then he got mad at me, he said. I told him that he was going the wrong way, and he said, up yours, to put it politely. Next, a few days later, I'm standing in front of the Trillium on South Park, and there go 3 boys coming down the road with scooters, weaving in and out of women with strollers and people walking at the same time. I raised my voice and said, come on, guys. And they did stop, and they did get the off the sidewalk and walk, or off their scooters and walk. My point is they shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. When I go down Spring Garden Road, the scooters are always going up and down the street on both sides and going in both directions, and that from Gordon. A very interesting tidbit we didn't get to on Councillors on the Hot Seat this week, but there is a motion for a staff report that I do believe it's Councillor Kent has put forward for consideration from council to get staff to come back with options for licensing e-bikes and e-scooters and looking at the insurance implications. Now, I can't say for sure, but that gets discussed here on this program an awful lot during this segment. And I'm wondering if they were listening. Anyway, we'll keep our ear to the ground on that one and see where it goes. Might be something you want to talk about. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back after the news. Welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This is the Monday Open Hour, your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. Some lines open if you want to get on. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind today?
Well, I was listening to the councillors this morning, and I was listening to people calling in, and I wanted to take like a 50,000-foot macro view kind of on what we're looking at right now. And it's a pattern that's playing out globally, but we're really feeling, I think, the pain of it here in the HRM. One, because the HRM is so big, and two, because our city center has always been so poorly planned. We're watching kind of Halifax play catch up to other urban areas, and it's like exponentially more painful here. But I mean, globally, we're kind of in this polycrisis, and the three things that seem to be intersecting specifically around what we're watching right now in the HRM is that, one, globally, we're in the middle of the largest wealth transfer in modern history. So we're watching trillions of dollars moving from aging homeowners and businesses, and ideally they would be moving to younger generations, but because we're also in a demographic free fall, the money isn't just moving to younger generations, it's moving to investors and institutions. And those investors and institutions are working off of kind of what's been adopted by the UN and the World Economic Forum, and they talk about it at CP40, which is the idea of the 15 to 30-minute city. So when you have something like the HRM, which is so sprawling and has so many rural and suburban areas and also a downtown core, we can start to watch like this interesting pattern emerge with how budgets are being allocated, right? And what we're watching now is the government is actively planning around cities and proximity, like proximity to city centers. And I think it might be one of the reasons why we've watched the province kind of really intercede with the development plan, and also the role of Mayor Fillmore. I'm still trying to figure out why he came here, but what this starts to look at is how value kind of gets redirected. So we're watching downtown properties rise because the investment, they're trying to like bring investment in here, which we're watching actively happen with Carney and different levels of government, now with Tim Houston making himself the Minister of Energy. And then as a result, suburban and rural properties will begin to lose value because they lose services and they lose attention. We heard the lady calling in from like the Peggy's Cove area.
Right.
They can't do the development out there because they lack infrastructure. They don't even have municipal water. And they're probably not going to invest in it, which is why no one can give a concrete answer. And then you have developers and pension funds and global investment coming in and buying up land near transit centers or, quote, walkable zones, or what do they call it? Like they look at density targets and walkable neighborhoods, sustainability guidelines. That's all words that underpin this blueprint for the 15 to 30-minute cities. So it's such a big issue. Like we can look at the minutia of all of the little things, but these seem to be the bigger moving pieces that are happening right now. And I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution. But I am looking at this pattern, and it's emerging all over the world. But when you have urban cores like Toronto and Vancouver and Calgary and Montreal, which have had maybe better urban planning, they're not feeling the crunch of adding bike lanes and increasing density in the downtown core and having these clogged arteries coming in. But they're all following a very similar pattern and plan. And unfortunately, it looks like revitalization on paper. It's like everybody wants to revitalize the HRM and they want to revitalize. But when they're talking about the HRM, they're really just talking about the concentrated downtown core. We're not talking about Ecum Secum. We're not talking about Musquodoboit. And so what it actually seems and starts to feel like is more like this ownership consolidation. And we talked about it last week with the landlords and the corporate landlords and the large holdings, and how the smaller landlords are getting priced out of the market. Like there's just this bigger conversation to have. And I don't know how we have it, and I don't know who we have it with. But I feel like when we can identify these patterns, we can start to objectively look at the municipal budget a little differently and how they're choosing to allocate those funds.
Appreciate the call, Nicole.
Thanks, Dan.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Gloria, how are you?
I'm well, Dan. Fingers crossed for tonight.
Oh, big game. It doesn't get any bigger, right?
I love that. I love that picture. He's 42.
Yep.
And last time he refused to leave when the manager went up and he said, no, you go back to your dugout.
Max Scherzer is who you're talking about, and
yes,
John Schneider
yes.
said that he thought he was going to take his head off when he tried to pull him out of the game.
I watched that when he went out. He stood right up and said, no.
You've been known to say that every once in a while, Gloria. Stand up and say no.
Well, you can say that every once in a while, but I'm listening this morning, and as I always listen, and I can't believe the arrogance of some of the councillors. They really forget why they're there and who put them there. They're there at the will of the people. And Kathryn Morse can say, we have the responsibility to do all these things. You have the responsibility to do what taxpayers are willing to pay for and able to pay for. And as I said before, Dan, and I will say it again, when I was on council, I was concerned about the spending. So I persisted and had an Auditor General hired. We have our own Auditor General, and they do a wonderful job, but they don't have the staff to look at the whole picture. And when you look at the recommendations, I look back recommendation in about the traffic, our transportation, our truck, and
yes.
how the money was being spent, and everything else about it, salaries and so on. And they still haven't completed that. It's 75% overall completed. And this is what happened. I said it before and I'll say it again. What we need in this HRM, and it'll probably never happen, is an external audit of every department. And we wouldn't be looking for millions in spending. We would find it right there. But that won't happen because the departments don't want it to happen, and I'm sure the councillors wouldn't agree with it. But that is the answer, Dan, right there.
I think we have to think outside the box, Gloria, and that, you know what I mean?
I know. I was there long enough. I know of what I speak, and you would find, places where we have, how many solicitors do we have? I think it's 25.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. That's a lot of lawyers.
Yeah. Well, these are the things that people don't know. And I'd like for an external auditor to tell us what every one of them is doing. And not only that, every department. They keep adding staff. They keep making new departments. We can't afford it. People are suffering. Businesses are suffering. And never mind what you want to do, councillors, and they're not all like that, but never mind what you want. It's what the taxpayers want and what we can afford to do. And go back to those recommendations by the Auditor General and complete them.
Right.
That would make a difference also. So that's my thing today, and I just hope that there is enough support there to, it will cost us money, of course, bring in an outside auditor. But look at the benefits we could find. And I am positive that we would find enough that we wouldn't have to worry about how much deficit we have.
Gloria, as always, my pleasure.
Have you heard any word on Bill?
I haven't heard a thing, and in fact, Vanessa and I were talking about that on Friday, and I'm assuming that because we haven't heard anything, that the no news is good news, but if we do hear anything, we'll pass it along.
Yeah, because I keep thinking about him.
Yeah, me too.
Hoping that he's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
thanks, Gloria.
Thank you, Dan. Bye.
Bye. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break. All right, welcome back. A few minutes left here in the open hour. Lines are wide open, everyone. If you want to get on quickly, here's an opportunity. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Listening to Gloria's comments and to comments from a few of you with regards to the budget and budget deliberations and the financial state of HRM, I have a notepad in front of me, and I wrote down content electorate. Now, for years, I think going back maybe as far as Peter Kelly, we've seen council make decisions and not really face a whole lot of backlash on them, right? They come to budget times, they have a number, they whittle the number down, there's a zero, the tax rate's flat, everybody is happy, because I can tell you, from my experience when it comes to all forms of government, the first question is, are my taxes going up? And if the council can sit back and with a big smile say, the tax rate's not going up this year, we were able to find savings, efficiencies, budgets, whatever. So for many years here in HRM, we've had a content electorate. Now, not everybody's content, right? There's always some few that raise concerns about spending, but for the most part, a content electorate. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that we have seen a shift. I think we've seen the electorate become more engaged. And I don't know if that happened during the pandemic, if that happened in the wake of the pandemic, when times started to get tough for everyone, when we saw inflation go through the roof and interest rates go up and all of that stuff. But I think we're not content anymore. And when we see council, or even by extension the province, or even the federal government, spending money that we find to be ridiculous, we don't accept it anymore. To a councillor, I've been doing this for a couple of months now. The last iteration I did it for 3 or 4 months, and having conversations with councillors before we come on the air and after we go off the air, and I can tell you that there are many that have been on council for more than a term that tell me that they are receiving much more feedback from their electorate now than they ever have. Most of it centering around active transportation or bike lanes. But they're seeing much, much more of it because we're just not content anymore. And I will challenge all 16 members of council, when you get to the budget deliberations, leave the golden gooses at the door. Predetermined thought processes on items that you may have supported in the past, may think is a good idea in good times, probably aren't anymore. Everything, and I mean everything, should be on the table when it comes to this budget deliberation, because you and I can't afford an increase that large. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome John to the show. John, how are you?
Not too bad. I have a comment on something that I'd like to express before I give you the topic I called in for, and that is, I spend a lot of time on a lot of different topics that people call in and talk to you about, whether it's Ottawa, whether it's Alberta, whether Alberta's situation. I have 12 siblings in Alberta. Their opinion about how the rest of Canada, how they feel, how they're treated, about Israel and the Palestinian protests and all of that. I'd like someday to sit down across from you and debate, not debate, but give you my opinion, and then you express your response, and then let the callers call in. But anyway,
Sure.
I set that aside. What I'm calling for today is the wasteful spending of our municipal government. When they ran, especially my candidate in my riding, when they ran, and they didn't tell me at the door they were going to support potentially $100 million for a bike lane. They're spending like they're dealing with the bottomless pit, we the taxpayers, and we're the bottomless pit. And we don't have, everybody out here is struggling to make ends meet, and the price of groceries, and Halifax Water wants to raise the rate. Nova Scotia Power wants to raise the rate. But everybody's income's not going up at the same percentage. And where is all this money coming from? So austerity, like, we need to practice restraint in our municipal government. And of course, the mentality of our municipal government being controlled by the NDP background, that's basically what it is. They don't care where the money comes from. Just give, and spend for small lobby groups that complain. And the bike lanes is one example. So we have to rein in our spending and get under control and start thinking about where this is coming from. What they should be doing, I'll tell you what needs to be done. We need to publish all of the councillors' names in the next municipal election that supported the potential $100 million for a bike lane.
Oh, it's easy enough to find. I mean, you go back and check the record, right?
Oh, I know that, but we need to publish it so the taxpayers need to get involved. A lot of them,
I agree,
are oblivious to what's going on, and they don't care.
Yep, I agree with you.
But they need to sit down and look at it. I meet with a lot of people, and I haven't run into anybody yet that supports the budget that they want to spend on bike lanes.
But I agree with you, John, and I just said it that we've had a content electorate for many years here, that people are just like, whatever, right? But now, when the rubber hits the road and we're staring down a 10% increase in property taxes, I don't think that's the case anymore.
That's right. I mean, years ago, I ran for mayor down in CBRM, and I took a stand when they wanted to throw out the RCMP. They tried to make an attempt at it here in our municipality, but it was shot down quickly, and I'm glad it was. But everything the taxpayers said down there turned out to be true. Everything they put forward turned out to be wrong, and the budget is double what it was prior to having two police forces. Their budget is double now. And to keep it down, to keep the anger of the municipal taxpayers down there, they took all of the senior administration of the police department and put it in the municipal budget to hide those costs or to deflect the real costs being expressed out to the ratepayers. But like, people need to listen. What's going on your show, if people would listen to it and say, well, I must take a secondary look at this myself and go in and look at the municipal budget and see if this is really going on. But like I said, I haven't found anybody that agrees with the budget on bike lanes. And that's not the reason I called today. That's only a minor topic, but it's something that we can't afford. We cannot afford it.
I hear you, John. Appreciate the call, sir.
Okay.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Been at this a long time, on both sides of the glass, on the news side of things and on the talk show side of things. And I'll tell you that when it comes to the active transportation file, I don't recall, and I do stand to be corrected, but I do not recall as much pushback as I've heard over the last, and this goes all the way back to Rick. Like, this hasn't happened in a year. This has gone all the way back to Rick Howe's days, and then through Todd, and now into today. And it's I've never seen that kind of pushback on a single item before. Really haven't. And I think, as I said right after the break, I think it's the mood of the electorate here has changed. We've moved from from it being, oh, whatever, I don't care. They're gonna city council, they don't pay attention to me, so I just don't care. I really don't think that is the case anymore. And I think that the more that we get involved, the more that we push back, the more that we challenge councillors for going into a budget session when they don't have everything on the table. When they say, no, bike lanes are off the table, or no, Halifax is, we need it. I won't, I'm not going to look at that for a budget cut. I close-mind thinking, folks, I don't think works anymore. I really don't. And I think that if we're going to get into this budget cycle and we're going to come out of it where you and I can afford the stuff that we can that we're using today, I think that everything has to be on the table. And I think that we're going to see some significant changes to some of the services and some of the things that we've come to expect here in HRM, because we just can't afford them anymore. It's just that simple. Thank you to each and every one of you who picked up the phone, dialed the numbers, and joined the program. I truly appreciate it. You make my day each and every day that you do it. We're going to stop and take a break here for the news. On the other side of it, we're going to tee up Game 3 tonight. We almost forgot about the Blue Jays. Nobody mentioned the Blue Jays today, except for Gloria, of course. Game 3 goes tonight. You're going to hear that broadcast right here on 95.7 News Radio. The voice of sports in the morning on this station, that's Simon Bennett, will be your guest when we come back. Also, a very interesting survey was released earlier, I think late last week, by the Travel Insurance Association of Canada, and it's showing that Canadians are still mad at the goings-on between our country and the United States, to the point where they're staying home. We're going to dig into that number as well. But when we come back, we'll tee up Game 3, Blue Jays, Dodgers. Simon Bennett, your guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Welcome to hour number 3, and we are just a couple of hours now away from the first pitch in Game 3 of the World Series. A venue change, the friendly confines of Rogers Center are gone. Now we're down in Los Angeles, and we're facing a hostile environment. We being, of course, the Toronto Blue Jays, Canada's team. And it is one of those odd games that is an important game. Odd games in series usually are important, and I think our next guest will tell us that, because Simon Bennett is just kind of an odd guy. How you doing, Simon?
Wow, what an intro. They've been not wrong. As I talked to him from a parking lot, Costco parking lot, waiting to finish birthday shopping for the wife.
Oh, my goodness. You're a brave soul to be at a Costco on a Monday.
It's better than Costco on a Saturday. Or better than lining up outside Rogers Center, they had a 2.5-hour lineup for merch on the off day.
Wow. It's we talked about this last time you joined us on Friday, how the city of Toronto is just a buzz. But I got to tell you, Simon, it's everywhere. I had a city councillor in here today wearing a Jays shirt. It's wild.
And you're seeing it in all the other sports teams, like not just like the Leafs and Raptors change their times, but like the Leaf game did okay Blue Jays during a break on the weekend. Like everyone's embracing this. I think everyone's just accepting everyone's Jays crazy right now, but it is legitimately everywhere. And then, the series will be over no later than next weekend, and then it'll be winter. So enjoy this.
And then the pressure goes squarely back onto the Toronto Maple Leafs, right?
Well, they haven't had as much press on them as usual. Like the whole thing with Anthony Stolarz calling out his teammates a week ago, and that would have been huge if the Jays weren't playing. It still kind of was, but let's worry about that later.
For sure.
What Leafs? I don't know what you mean.
Simon, as I mentioned in the intro, we switched venues now. We're in Los Angeles. The Dodgers skipper complaining about international travel. We've only been doing it since 1985. Is that maybe a built-in excuse?
Give me a break. First off, they're going south of the border, so whatever the problems were, it would have been U.S. customs.
Right.
Get back to me. I am convinced, I've always said this in the lead-up to this, I believe pretty firmly they're going to be back in Toronto this weekend, whether it's 6 or 7. whether it goes 7 or I think there will be baseball on Halloween at Rogers Center. So then he can deal with customs.
Right, absolutely, and trick or treat candy. We got experience on the mound tonight for the Blue Jays.
Incredible stat with Max Scherzer, who has done pretty much everything. He is a first ballot guy in Cooperstown in the Hall of Fame. Tonight he will be the first ever to pitch for 4 different teams in the World Series. It has never been done. It is happening tonight. I think when, on hindsight, it was a smart move. For those that don't remember, he did not pitch in the first round of the playoffs. He wasn't even on the roster. And he had a really bad September. And his ERA was like 10 in September. And I think what happened was they rested him. He pitched like one of those, inter-squad games on the break during the wild card round. That was it. He rested up. He got healthy. And you saw old Max Scherzer in Seattle. And then when John Schneider came out to have a chat with him, and Scherzer was like, whoa, no, go away. It was like a 5-minute-second conversation. Then that's like, to me, one of the signature moments of this playoff run. And it just showed everyone that Scherzer is back. So I expect peak Max Scherzer. The question will be, what do the Jays bats do? Because as you saw in Game 2, the Dodgers starters are lights out, and they've got Tyler Glasnow. I think it's important they win tonight, if anything, because good luck with Ohtani tomorrow.
Right, and I was going to ask you, that was my next question. Glasnow is the response for the Dodgers on the mound. How do the Jays bats line up against him?
It's hard to say. They haven't faced these guys a whole lot. I think the two keys for me will be Bo Bichette back in the lineup. He played and started Game 1 at second base, made it through about 2/3 of the game, and smartly they're not expecting him to go a full 9 after missing 6 weeks. But they got something out of him, and then he just pinch hit in Game 2. So I think Bo being in the lineup, a little more, he's got a few more bats under him now. We'll see how that goes. No one's really talking about, at least from the team, George Springer. Got hit in the hand, and then his next at bat in Game 2, you saw him wince and shake that hand. They need him. And if there's any issue, and, it's like hockey. It's like, what is a hand? It's an upper body injury. It's above the waist, right? Not lower. So where's middle body injury? Where's that one? So if Springer's hand's not right, I think that's a big problem because he's Mr. October on that team. With all due respect to Vlad Guerrero Jr. and the other guys who have produced, he is the catalyst of that lineup. He's been like the heart and soul of that lineup. And if his hand's not right, might be issues, especially against the pitching the Dodgers have.
It's something I've noticed throughout the entire playoff, Simon, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but people are pitching to Guerrero Jr. Without Bichette in the lineup, and now if Springer's a question, there's no way to really protect him, right? So if that happens, then they walk Vladdy every time he sets up.
Well, and how many times have the unexpected guys come up, like Addison Barger, World Series Grand Slam as a pinch hitter, right? Like all these names. It's a big reason the Jays are still playing is because of all these, not want to say no names, but like the non-stars, the non-Vladdies, the non-Bows that have contributed. But you're absolutely right. If Springer's not 100%, we already know he's not 100% with his knee. If Springer isn't right with his hand, and if Bo starts to show that, maybe the knee's not right or as right as it should be, then you're right. They're going to walk Vladdy every time. The Jays can counter that and walk Ohtani every time, but then you got to deal with Freeman and Betts and Will Smith.
Right.
So that's the trick, right?
Absolutely. I don't know if you care to make a prediction on tonight's game, Simon, but here's your chance.
I think this is, I don't want to say must win, but I think it's important the Jays at least score a few runs tonight. I think Scherzer gives us peak Max Scherzer. We get a good 5-6 innings out of him. And then the question is whether Glasnow. The key in Game 1 was they got to Blake Snell and got to the middle relief. So the Jays need to, what they didn't do very well against Yamamoto on Saturday
was lights out, man. Yamamoto
was
lights
so
out.
Good.
Yeah.
He was incredible. Credit to him. He was very good. Back-to-back shutouts in the playoffs. It hadn't been done in over 20 years.
Right.
They need to work the counts long on Glasnow, make him work, tire him out as much as you can so you can get to those other guys in the bullpen. If they do that, they have a chance. I am cautiously optimistic the Jays take Game 3 tonight.
The most important question of the interview, Simon Bennett, will we see you in your Jays jersey at Rogers Center for Game 6?
You got a couple of bucks I can borrow off you? So I was, as many people in Toronto and across the country will attest, I was 10,000 on the queue when tickets came out, and I tried for Saturday, tried for Game 2, and by the time they got to the end, they were all gone, and there was like the outfield district seats, which during the season, the standing room is usually $20. It was going for over $1,000. I'm like, Nope, no. And it is what it is. I am, though, going to doing watch parties, so showing the game on the screen at Rogers Center, and it's $15. All goes to Jay's Care. So I'm doing that tomorrow. So that'll be fun. So it'll feel like I'm at the game. I did it for Game 5 against Philly. Watch the game on the Rogers Center Jumbotron because that might have been the clincher, but Curt Schilling had a great outing and he didn't. So I'm trying it again. The family, we're all going to go watch Game 4 on the screen at Rogers Center and see what happens.
Over and under on Simon Bennett hot dogs for that game.
6. High over. Always take the over.
Simon, I appreciate your time, my friend. Enjoy your shopping experience.
Oh, yeah, I got to go in now, don't I?
You do. All right. Thanks, Simon.
Good luck. Thanks, buddy.
That's Simon Bennett, our sports guy. He likes the hot dogs, I'll tell you that much. When we come back, has the snowbird era ended? New stats are showing that it wasn't just last winter that Canadians are staying away from the United States. It's this winter, too. We'll dig into it right after the break. All right, welcome back. The Monday edition rolls along here. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We've talked about Canadians and our relationship with the United States a number of times on this program. And if you can remember way back into like November and December of last year and through the winter months, there was a lot of Canadians that were just saying, nope, not traveling to the United States. That was in the height of the 51st state discussions or rantings of the American president. That was the sovereignty question was being bantered around. So there was a lot of Canadians that were pretty upset by that. And as much as it is never easy to say, nope, not traveling to my winter destination this year because of that, when it was in the early days of this Trump administration, many people said that very thing. I know I have friends and family who have not traveled and didn't travel, and some have even sold their property south of the border. But now we're almost a year in. Well, we're over a year in, and that kind of discussion maybe waning a little bit. Maybe people are like, I really have to get to Florida, or I really want to go to Texas, or I really want to go to New Mexico or Arizona to see my friends and so on and so forth. But a new study has been released by the Travel Health Insurance Association of Canada. It's called the Winter Smart Travelers Survey, and it's showing that people are still mad and people are still not picking up and traveling to the United States. Canadians as a whole, 26% of survey respondents said they would likely head south of the border this winter. That's a 37% drop from previous years. The biggest group, traditionally the snowbird generation, like my family, my father is a snowbird, 10% of them saying they're heading south. That's down 66%. To give us a little bit of perspective on this, on the numbers that came out in this survey, Executive Director of THIA, that is Will McAleer. Will, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me this morning.
Now, is it? Were you as surprised as I was when you got the results of this survey? I thought we'd see a drop in people because obviously there's been a lot of attention paid for it, but these numbers are quite big.
Yeah, they're large, and what we've seen is they've been consistent, right, since inauguration date, not only intentions, but also throughout the summer, right? Throughout the summer, Canadians still said we didn't want to travel, and they didn't travel to the U.S. pretty significant declines in year-over-year return auto traffic and air flight as well for Canadians. So it stuck. So these are the intentions for the fall and winter.
Now, is it because of the political tensions and the ongoing back and forth between Canada and the United States at a political level? Is it the economy and the affordability crisis, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, it's not the only reason, but it sure is a significant one for Canadians. The tariff issue isn't finished yet, and as a result, they're still feeling maybe not quite as welcome as they did in the past. But look, there's a percentage of Canadians that are also saying, listen, the dollar and the economy are having an impact, but we've seen that in years past. The difference here is those snowbirds now who are saying, listen, not sure we want to go. And as you mentioned earlier, some are even selling their condos in places like South Florida, big destination for snowbirds.
The interesting part of this survey is that the younger generation, those Generation Zs, are down about 18%, but still almost half are willing to travel south of the border.
Well, I think we have to remember we're so close to the U.S. Convenience is there.
Right.
And listen, if you want to hop in a car, affordability can be there as well. But it's interesting to note that those are amongst the highest percentages of individuals who don't get travel insurance, for instance. And they have to understand, look, the need for it, like we saw in COVID, is real, particularly for medical emergency if you're down in the U.S.
Well, in conversations with friends and family who would fit into that, and I'm putting quotes around the snowbird generation that normally would head south, many of them telling me that the political tensions with the United States were the sort of the last straw, but affordability issues were a bigger portion, and the cost of insurance for those that are over 70 is also a deterrent to them. Is that what you're hearing too?
Well, it can be expensive, but realize there's so many folks who often have medical conditions and need coverage for pre-existing conditions. But look, it's real. The impact for finances is across the board, and travel is for many people a luxury. The one thing we need to remember is it's still likely to get cold up here in Canada. Fewer options than you might have had in the summer to travel and explore Canada.
I wonder if some of that southerly facing traffic that we've seen traditionally over the years is maybe moving east-west, staying in the country, or maybe exploring other places like Europe or Spain or Portugal.
Europe, Spain, and Portugal large on the agenda, as is the Caribbean. Places like Mexico. Mexico's the number one destination outside of the U.S. for Canadians to travel to, and it's likely to be just as or more enticing this winter.
Insurance rates are they on the rise, or have they been stable since, I'm thinking, right after the pandemic?
We've seen broad stability in insurance rates. Haven't seen any major increases, but typically you'd see a cost of living increase where people start to see bigger differences as they age into a different age band, or as they maybe have different medical conditions year over year that they need to answer medical questions for.
It's all based on an individual case, I would assume, correct?
You bet. Individual case, individual circumstances, trying to make sure that the coverage aligns with an individual's medical conditions. And it can be challenging sometimes to get coverage, but it's important for people to take the time, make sure they're getting the right coverage for the right trip based on their medical conditions.
I can't imagine traveling without it. It would be a nightmare should something happen.
Yeah, the U.S. particularly, the most expensive place on the planet, but we're also seeing Mexico as a pretty high cost center if you had a medical emergency. So something to take into consideration for Canadians.
Will, I appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Will McAleer, he's from the Travel Health Insurance Association of Canada. Don't think about that a lot, right? We've heard all of the stories about the cost of healthcare in the United States. Horror stories, just bankruptcies because of it. But how many of you have gone to Mexico on a week's vacation, right, before all of this business happened, and went down there with just basic insurance or none at all? That's something you think about, right? Very interesting. 37% drop from previous years for Canadians in general Boomers, 66% down. Gen Z, the most likely, that age demographic, to travel to the United States, 44%. Say they'll likely cross the border. That's down about 18 points over years past. But there is a large generational divide in travel behavior, which is very interesting to me. But I can tell you that particularly in the boomer generation and maybe even the Gen Xs that I'm a part of, we have long memories, don't we? Time for us to take another break. We're getting an update on the news. On the other side of it, do you remember when we were talking about the wildfires here in Annapolis County and Kings this year and some of the heroic efforts that were undertaken to save property from those wildfires? Well, we're going to have a conversation about these sprinkler systems and how they save homes from wildfires when we meet with the province's fire and ground search and rescue coordinator. That's Dave Rockwood. He's your guest right after the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. It is the Monday edition, and we had many of a conversation over the last several months about the wildfire situation in Nova Scotia, and two major fires, of course, dominating the headlines throughout the fire season, and that one, of course, would have been the Long Lake Fire in Annapolis County and the Lake George Fire in Kings County, and it was, I don't think I'm being overly enthusiastic by saying it was a Herculean effort on behalf of DNR firefighters and firefighters from fire departments across the province and volunteers and everybody that was involved in keeping those flames at bay the best that they could throughout the entire season. And one of the things that kind of came to the forefront, particularly with the Long Lake Fire, when those flames were encroaching upon some built-up areas there, was the effort to try and mitigate loss of structures to these fires. And one of the apparatus that are used to do that are these so-called sprinkler systems that get installed on properties in an effort to try and keep embers from lighting fires and those kind of things. Very pleased to welcome into the show today to tell us a little bit about them and where we go from here is the province's Fire, Ground Search and Rescue Coordinator, and that's Dave Rockwood. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing good, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm glad that you were able to spend a few minutes with us. It was a busy year, wasn't it?
It was very busy, yeah. It was, it seemed like it just didn't want to end.
So when as I mentioned, when Long Lake happened and it started to explode like we saw it in that windy day when it blew up in size and got towards some areas where there was some structures and some properties, y'all jumped into action to try and save those. And one of the pieces of gear that you use are these so-called sprinkler systems. How do these things work?
So we had been on the ground for about a week, just over a week, and probably a week and a half, and had gone in and set up these sprinklers around the community. In that specific circumstance, we were dealing with very tall coniferous forests, or your spruces and your firs. So in those circumstances, we knew that when the fire took off, it was going to be big flame front coming in, a lot of heavy heat, and a lot of ambers raining down. So we attached those sprinklers right up to the peaks of the roofs and try and get as much water around the structures as possible.
Are they sprinklers like we're familiar with that we use to water our lawns, or are they different?
Similar, they do much the same thing. They're just they're beefed up. They're made to take a bit of a beating, and in most cases they do about 100 to 80 feet of 360 around.
So you put those on the roof, and then it sprinkles the structure itself and I would imagine the property around it, right?
Yeah, so we're trying to increase the moisture around that structure, just trying to get what we call it a humidity bubble around the building and around the immediate vegetation. And then the moisture raining down on the roof, that's just to, if the ambers or sparks and that come from the wildfire, once they land on a roof, that's just so that they get knocked out right away and don't have a chance to smolder and create a structure fire.
How do you provide water to these things? Do you use the property's water, or how does that work?
No, we weren't using, well, in some cases we use ponds that were found on the properties, right. But what we quickly realized is we go through probably a setup of probably, if you had 3 or 4 houses, you'd go through probably 3,000 to 6,000 gallons in about an hour. So we were draining small ponds in yards quite regularly. So we had a massive fleet of volunteer tankers that were just literally bringing water to these ponds. And wherever we couldn't stretch hose and get the water to those sites, that's where we brought in porta tanks. So it's almost like a big swimming pool that a lot of the municipal fire departments have. We bring those in, and they hold about 3,000 gallons of water, and we just constantly cycle tankers through, keeping the water flowing, and more or less create little ponds in yards and wherever we could. Now, unfortunately, there's places where we can't do that, and in those circumstances, we went to a manual hydration. So just use the deck guns off the fire trucks just to increase the moisture around.
Must have been just a logistics nightmare to make all that happen.
Well, wildfire in general, once you get into those large operations, it's a lot more to it than the average person understands. Right. But yeah, it was a monumental task. Like over 26, 27 days, we ran about 3,000 volunteer firefighters through the program.
Wow. Now, these units obviously are very specialized, and Nova Scotia doesn't have a lot of them, but they were successful, so I'm assuming we're getting more?
Yep. So right now, we the province itself, the Department of Emergency Management, we own one. There are a number of other ones throughout. So West Hants, for example, within one of their fire departments, they have a unit, and then Halifax Regional Municipality through HRM Fire has a few as well. So we were able to use those during the Long Lake and the Lake George fire. And we are presently in the process of beefing up our inventory to stockpile around the province at our key locations.
Chances are we're going to see wildfires in the future, I would imagine, right?
It's not going away. No, that's for sure.
Dave, obviously, the province and the people that have been impacted by this, so everybody a debt of gratitude to that, and I just wanted to purvey that from our listeners to you guys. You were in our thoughts the entire summer, and thank you for all the work that you did.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Dave Rockwood. Appreciate your time, sir. Dave Rockwood is the province's a fire and ground search and rescue coordinator, and is responsible for some of the effort that went into that. Can you imagine that amount of water had to move? It was it's incredible. It's not like there's a hydrant out there, or there's you run a long line of hose. You had to make ponds when ponds weren't available, and there was some structures lost, and it wasn't for a lack of effort, I can tell you that much. And this adding more of these is probably only going to help in the future, because, as he said, it likely isn't going anywhere. Long Lake Fire and Lake George Fire, the two biggest ones, but we saw fires right across the province this year, and if things don't improve when it comes to dryness, we likely are going to see more. The fire season has been extended. Don't forget, folks, we're still into the 31st of October. Not sure. I haven't heard yet if they're going to extend it past then. But I can tell you, and if you missed it off the top of the show, I did spend some time in the woods of Lunenburg County on the weekend, and I did hear and see that there was some moisture on the ground there, which was nice to see. I was not expecting it. Allister Aalders, our weather specialist, who's going to join us right after the break, said that the ground is very, very dense and very hard. But these puddles were in the places where the puddles should be, if that makes any sense. If you've ever traveled down a dirt logging road or whatever, you know that there's areas where the puddles live, where they always are. And these puddles had water in them, and some had some significant water in them. So I was very pleased to see that. I was Shocked, however, at the level of some of the lakes and the rivers that were in this area that I normally frequent, and very much down, significantly down. In fact, one of the rivers wasn't even running, and that is to say something. There's a small, and it's not anything to write home about, but there's a small waterfall in the area that I was in, and normally you can use it to kind of find your bearings. You can hear it, but I couldn't hear anything coming off of that waterfall. So we have a long way to go, and I think the forecast is going to be good for us looking for water. I know that Councillor Gillis was in here earlier today from Lower Sackville and Beaver Bank, and there's a number of people up there that have dry wells. And I know you're all looking to the skies, and I'm seeing some threatening clouds happening now. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop and take our last break here on the program, and when we come back, we'll get some stats on the weekend weather from our weather specialist, Allister Aalders. We'll take a look into the next couple of days and what we can expect, and we'll give you a quick peek into Halloween. Are you going to need to bring an umbrella when you're out trick-or-treating? Allister Aalders, our weather specialist, is our guest right after the break. Back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, and on the phone with us today is our weather specialist and frequent contributor to the program, and that is Allister Aalders. Allister, how are you?
Good, Dan. How are you?
I am well. It rained pretty hard at my house last night, and for an extended period of time. In fact, the moisture did in some of my outdoor lights, which is unfortunate, but that must be a sign that it's time to put the Christmas lights up soon. Anyway... I'm assuming that I wasn't alone, and it wasn't just a dark cloud over top of my balcony last night, that there was some rain that fell across a lot of HRM and a lot of the province.
Yeah, so we talked about on Friday the system that would be kind of developing and stalling offshore for the start of the week, and it did end up doing that with perhaps on Friday, we said there would be a chance of some showers moving in, and these did end up materializing into actually some more widespread showers and rain. So that was certainly welcome. We had about 10 to 15, some pockets up to 20 in the Halifax area. Some inland locations had a bit less, lower than 10 millimeters, but about 5 to 10. So it was certainly beneficial rain, and the rain, while not falling in Halifax at the moment, is still ongoing for parts of the province, especially through parts of the valley, northern and eastern Nova Scotia today. And we will get into a bit more rain here in the Halifax area tonight, but it is certainly those valley and northern and eastern regions that are getting into this much-needed rain, over the next 24 hours or so.
I haven't checked the forecast as of late, Allister, but earlier this morning there were special weather statements up for a good chunk of the province.
Yeah, so Environment Canada first put up these statements for the north and eastern shores yesterday. As it stands now, the special weather statement covers the Annapolis Valley through Hants County, the north and eastern shore, so Cumberland, Colchester, Antigonish, and Halifax east of Porter's Lake. Now, there's a rainfall warning for Pictou and Pictou and Guysborough counties. Antigonish is in the special weather statement. That is because it looks like in those counties, very localized, we could see amounts in excess of 50 millimeters, possibly upwards of 80 or 100 millimeters.
Holy smokes.
It's very heavy rainfall, but very, very localized. The fact that the system is stalled and somewhat slow to leave will allow the rainfall totals to add up for those locations in the special weather statement. It's a general 20 to 40, upwards of 50 millimeters by the time it wraps up later tomorrow. Some localized amounts could, as I mentioned, be closer to or in excess of 50 millimeters. But here in the Halifax area, it's a bit uncertain because it's quite interesting. The center of the low is offshore, but there's a weak trough connecting it to a weak surface center that's present just over the Halifax area today. So that's why the rain's kind of somewhat around us right now. There's a bit of a dry slot in the system. So we will see the rain moving back in tonight. If we can manage to get into some slower bands of heavier rain, we could see another 10 to 20 millimeters here in Halifax and Metro. But otherwise, if not, it's likely a general 2 to 10 millimeters of rain.
We've had, I'm not going to say a lot, but we've had a significant amount of rain over the last 5 or 6 days, particularly here in Halifax County and and elsewhere, like in Lunenburg County and so on and so forth. The reason why I say that is I was out in Lunenburg County earlier on the weekend, and the puddles are back.
Yes, that's what a lot of people are saying. I mean, the thing about this rain is that for the most part, it has been on the heavier side, especially those two events early and late last week. Those were very heavy rainfall events. And as we've talked about, the ground is very dry. So it's more challenging for the ground to be able to absorb that rainfall. So I would say it is a mix of obviously more rain events, as we've talked about. The pattern, I think we can declare, has changed because we're starting to see these rain events after, having really no rain for months. But certainly part of that, not problem, but part of the issue with heavier rainfall rates is that you're going to see more runoff or more settling than the water being able to absorb into the ground. And obviously, given the ground is so dry, that is a greater factor at this point in time, just because you have the heavy rain that's already going to be a challenge to absorb into the ground. And given it's so dry, a lot of that's just going to run off.
I will say in that very same area that the rivers are extremely low and the lakes are down significantly because of a lack of rain. So we need a lot more in order to fill those back up. Alistair, once we get through, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that, we have had more rain. This has just been a recent development, and we're still in a deficit for October. Average is about 130 to 150, depending on where you are in HRM for the month of October. And in many cases, we're still, in the range of about 40 to 60 or 70 millimeters, depending on where you are. So we are still in quite a deficit.
For sure. Alistair, once we get through this next rain event, what are we looking at kind of midweekish?
So the midweek is looking fair. The system will start to break down and then gets pushed off to the south and east. So we get a bit of a high-pressure ridge that builds in. It's not going to be necessarily what I would call, say, like a clean high where it's wall-to-wall sunshine, but it's more of a mix of sun and cloud, through Wednesday and Thursday. So we get a bit of a break, and then there is another system on the way. Good news that it's another system, but the timing not great because it rolls in for Halloween.
Oh no!
Yeah, so it's if you have any trick or treating plans, if you're taking the kids or the grandkids out, or maybe going to a Halloween party on Friday, the weather at this point not looking great. Some of the guidance wants to taper off the heaviest rain and wind around trick-or-treating time. That would be the best-case scenario, but a lot of the guidance has that rain moving in, during the day Friday and sticking around for that prime trick-or-treating time. And coupled with, a gusty southeasterly wind, it wouldn't be very great for trick-or-treating. I mean, when there's candy involved, I'm sure the children may not care about the weather.
But their parents will.
The parents will, for sure. So, certainly it's not the greatest Halloween weather. You often hear people saying, putting a snowsuit over the costume. Well, maybe the rain jacket over the costume this Halloween.
Yeah, we're going to celebrate Halloween here on Friday, so make sure you stick around for that, because I hear Vanessa's going to dress up in a costume this year. So we'll see what happens.
Should be interesting.
We'll see if she brings an umbrella with her. She might be our weather vane, right? Alistair,
you never know, eh?
Very quickly, obviously, there's a big weather event happening. Although I looked at the latest guidance here about an hour ago. It doesn't look like that Melissa is going to have a lot of direct impact, at least here in Nova Scotia. That's the good news. The bad news is that, oh boy, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, all in the track of this storm.
It's devastating to see. I mean, as someone who loves weather, looking at the satellite of Melissa this afternoon, I mean, it's incredible just looking at the structure of the storm, but at the same time, it's like you really realize how significant and devastating this storm is likely to be. It's a Category 5 hurricane, maximum sustained winds of 270 kilometers per hour, and expecting landfall as either a Cat 5 or a high-end Category 4, which really I don't think is going to make a great amount of difference at this stage because it's a catastrophic hurricane nonetheless. Upwards of 30, possibly 40 inches of rain for a large portion.
Inches, not centimeters. Inches.
Inches of rain for much of central and eastern Jamaica. So that's about 500 to 750 millimeters of rain. So obviously it's slow progression, and the mountains enhancing that moisture.
Yep.
All a contributing factor to that. So obviously catastrophic flash flooding and land and mudslides, the big concern with the rain, on top of the catastrophic winds of of category 4 and 5 strength that are expected, storm surge along the south coast of Jamaica. And then, as you mentioned, it moves off as a bit of a weaker storm, but still, catastrophic and life-threatening flash flooding for parts of Haiti and the Dominican Republic expected through midweek. Eastern Cuba expecting to get some heavy rainfall and possibly flash flooding there too, and landslides, along with storm surge Tuesday and Tuesday night. And then Southeast Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, they're expecting, hurricane conditions with storm surge and heavy rainfall midweek. Possibly some impacts near Bermuda, but as you mentioned, the center of this storm, it will be weakening by the end of the week, becomes post-tropical, expected to remain offshore of our region, but likely providing a bit of moisture into this non-tropical low for Halloween, so enhancing the rainfall that moves through the region on Friday, but the center of that storm remaining offshore of our region.
Allister will keep his eye on it, and if it changes, he certainly will join us and let us know. You can listen to him every morning and every afternoon right here on 95.7, and of course, he'll be back on Friday to see Vanessa's Halloween costume and to give us his weekend weather forecast. So we'll get the very latest on Halloween on Friday. Thanks, Allister.
Thanks, Dan. Have a good week.
That is Allister Aalders. We're going to say goodbye. Hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass. It's going to be a busy show tomorrow. I hope you can spend some time with us. Until then, everybody, be well. And remember, be kind to one another.